Arrival of the flagship, the council chamber was alive with energy. Every seat was filled, every corner echoed with the whispers of alien voices. Today was meant to be a historic day, a day that could end centuries of tension between species. They had all gathered for peace talks, hoping the humans would finally sit down to negotiate. Outside the Great Hall, fleets from many worlds orbited the council planet. Their ships formed glittering walls of steel and energy across the stars. Commanders sat ready, expecting a simple human envoy ship, perhaps a cruiser, perhaps a frigate, a small ship for talks. Nothing more, after all. This was not a battlefield. This was supposed to be a diplomatic meeting. But then the stars themselves seemed to vanish. From the void, the human flagship appeared. It did not arrive quietly. It tore open the darkness of space. Its engines burned. Like suns, its shadow swallowed entire fleets. Its size defied belief. No alien empire had ever built something so massive, so terrible, so alive with power. The hull was black like obsidian, scarred with the marks of ancient battles. Along its sides, weapons stretched like rows of fangs, cannons, missile silos, energy lances, enough to destroy worlds. Even its silence was loud. Even its stillness was threatening. It was not a ship built for talks. It was a ship built to remind the galaxy of fear inside the chamber. The delegates froze. Thousands of eyes locked on the great viewing screens as the image of the human flagship spread across the galaxy. The buzzing noise of conversation died in an instant, and in its place came silence, heavy, crushing silence. This cannot be real, whispered one elder from the Veylan species. His voice trembled. His hands shook. He had lived through 3 wars, but never had he seen anything like this. Another delegate, feathers pale with terror, muttered, "They promised talks. They promised a representative. Not this." Every heartbeat in the chamber seemed to echo. Fear crawled across the room like a living thing, spreading from one delegate to another, until even the bravest among them dared not speak too loudly. Admiral Kazara, watching from the defense fleet orbiting the planet, gripped the edge of her command chair. Her voice was low, meant only for her officers. "Scan it. Tell me this is a trick. Tell me this is some projection." But her crew's scanners told the truth. The readings were beyond belief. The firepower of that single human flagship equaled, no, surpassed, the combined strength of 5 of the galaxy's strongest nations. The news spread like wildfire, across colonies, across stations. Across the great trade hubs of the galaxy, people stopped what they were doing to stare at the broadcasts. Hollow screens glowed in every street, showing the same image, the black shape of the human flagship. Children hid behind their parents. Warriors gritted their teeth. Priests fell to their knees. The old myths of humanity returned in whispers. Stories of how humans had survived death worlds, of how they had fought monsters that devoured armies, of how they thrived where no one else could. These were not myths anymore. They were alive, real, shining in the void above the council world. And yet, the humans said nothing. They sent no message. They opened no channel. The flagship just floated there, silent, unmoving, unshakable, its shadow covering fleets, its hull glimmering like the eyes of a predator watching prey. The silence was more terrifying than war. Inside the chamber, panic began to grow. Some delegates shouted for the fleets to open fire. Others screamed for surrender. Others prayed desperately to their gods. The great chamber that was built for peace talks had become a cage of fear. The supreme speaker of the council slammed his staff down. His voice was strong, but his eyes betrayed his fear. Order! There will be order in these chambers. But even his words felt hollow. The fear was too heavy, too real. A young aide, clutching a datapad so tightly his hands bled, whispered to his mentor, "Why bring a flagship for talks, unless the talks were never the plan?" His words spread. Like poison, everyone heard them, everyone understood them. The humans had not come to discuss. The humans had come to show, to remind, to terrify. The delegates looked again at the viewing screens, at that black colossus in the sky. And in that moment, the truth was clear. The humans had no need to speak. Their ship had spoken louder than words ever could, in the silent void of space, with the galaxy watching. The human flagship waited, and in its waiting, entire empires trembled. Fear in the council. The chamber that once glittered with golden lights now felt like a prison. The delegates sat in silence, some clutching their robes, some whispering to each other with shaking voices. All eyes remained on the great screens, where the image of the human flagship floated like a nightmare. It had been hours since the ship arrived, hours of silence, hours of waiting. The humans had not spoken, not moved, not fired. They simply hung in the void, watching. The council was breaking apart. One delegate, his scales trembling, shouted, "We must leave this world. We must scatter our fleets. If we remain, they will destroy us!" His voice cracked with desperation. Another, older and colder, hissed back, "Leave!" and show weakness. That ship was sent to test us. If we run, the galaxy will see us as prey. We must hold our ground. The arguments grew louder. Every faction demanded its own path. Some wanted surrender. Others wanted defiance. A few believed humanity had come for negotiation. Though their voices were drowned out by fear, Admiral Kazara sent her report to the council. Her face appeared on the massive holo display, her voice steady, though her eyes betrayed the truth. "We have scanned the flagship. Our fleets cannot match it. Its defenses are beyond anything in our records. Any attack would be suicide." The chamber erupted. Some shouted at her for cowardice. Others demanded proof. She silenced them with 3 words that chilled every heart. "They are waiting. Waiting for what?" None could answer. The council speaker tried again to calm the chaos. His staff slammed against the floor, the sound echoing like thunder. "We are leaders of the galaxy. We must not fall into panic. Humanity cannot mean to destroy us. They came here to speak." But his words rang hollow. The delegates did not believe him. Their eyes betrayed the truth. They believed in legends, legends of humanity that had spread through whispers for centuries, whispers of soldiers who fought until their last breath, of explorers who tamed death worlds where no other species survived, of fleets that vanished into human space and never returned. Some believed humans were cursed, others believed they were chosen. But all agreed on one thing: humans were dangerous. The youngest delegate in the chamber, barely past his first cycle, stood trembling but brave. His voice quivered as he asked, "What if they are not here to talk? What if they came to remind us of what they are?" The words hung heavy. No one answered. No one dared. Outside, the alien fleets wavered. Captains sent frantic messages to their leaders. Their crews begged for orders. Some ships drifted too close to the flagship, and alarms blared. The human ship did not fire, but the tension alone was unbearable. In the marketplaces across the galaxy, citizens panicked. Some demanded their government's surrender. Some prepared for evacuation. Others fell into despair. The fear of humanity spread faster than light. One alien elder in the chamber whispered, "This silence. It is a weapon. They do not speak because they do not need to. We already know what they want." Another delegate shouted back, "No, you are wrong. If they wanted war, we would already be ash. They want us to make the first move. They want us to show weakness." The chamber shook with voices. Fear and anger and despair collided. It was no longer a council. It was chaos. In the center of it all, the supreme speaker sat trembling. His hands gripped the edge of the podium. His voice finally broke, soft, almost a whisper. "They have come not for talks, but for judgment." Silence fell again. His words echoed in every heart. Admiral Kazara spoke once more, her voice sharp. "Then we must not give them reason. Hold your fleets. Hold your weapons. Do not provoke them." But deep inside, even she knew the truth. It did not matter. The humans had already won, because victory was not in battle. Victory was in fear, and the galaxy was already conquered. As the Council sat in silence, the massive human flagship drifted closer. Its engines hummed like thunder. Its shadow grew longer, stretching across the fleets and the planet. It had not spoken. It had not fired. Yet entire empires trembled under its presence. Every alien in the chamber now understood. The humans had arrived not to discuss peace, but to remind the galaxy of a terrible truth. Humanity did not need war to terrify the stars. Their silence was enough. The silent show of power. The human flagship still did not move. It floated above the Council planet like a predator resting after a hunt. Its shadow covered fleets, stations, and the surface of the world itself. The stars seemed smaller beside, it weaker, as if even the cosmos bent beneath its presence. No message, no broadcast, no signal, only silence, only power. The alien fleets around the planet twitched nervously. Pilots sat in their cockpits with hands shaking over weapons they dared not fire. Captains whispered orders that carried no strength. Some wanted to retreat, others wanted to stand their ground. But no one dared to act first, inside the Council. Chamber fear had grown into something else. It was no longer just panic, it was submission. Delegates no longer shouted. They sat frozen, eyes locked on the giant ship above, their minds filled with one thought. Humans were not here to talk. Humans were here to remind them of fear. Admiral Kazara stood at her command post, staring at the scans. Her officers whispered behind her. Why do they not fire? Why do they not move? What are they waiting for? She had no answers. Only one thought remained clear. The humans were showing them something, and then, slowly, the flagship shifted. Not an attack, not a weapon fired, only movement. But the galaxy trembled. Its colossal hull turned with perfect control. Shields shimmered across its surface like the skin of a living beast. Weapon ports rotated. Energy cores glowed. It was as if the ship stretched, reminding the galaxy of what it carried, reminding them it could end them all with a single command. The silence of the humans was not weakness, it was dominance. On the surface of the Council world, people ran. Through the streets, civilians pointed at the sky. Parents pulled their children close. Markets shut down. Alarms wailed. Priests shouted prayers. The shadow of the flagship stretched across cities, turning day into night. Broadcasts spread across every system in remote colonies. Miners stared at the image on cracked holoscreens. In wealthy capitals, nobles held their breath as the flagship drifted across the stars. Armies stood still, waiting. The galaxy itself was frozen, the council chamber filled with whispers again. Delegates spoke in hushed voices. "It is a warning," one said. "No, it is a challenge," said another. A third whispered, "It is a reminder that humanity needs no words, only presence." The youngest delegate rose to his feet, trembling. His voice shook but carried through the hall. They could have sent diplomats. They could have sent messages. They sent a warship instead. Why? Because this warship speaks louder than any envoy ever could. It tells us without words that they are stronger, and they know we know it. The chamber fell into silence again. No one could deny it. The humans had spoken through silence. Admiral Kazara sent her final report, her face pale but her voice steady. "We are witnessing the greatest show of power in galactic history. They do not fire because they do not need to. They do not speak because silence terrifies more than words. They came to show us what we fear most, that we are helpless before them." Her words spread across the galaxy. Entire sectors now believed the war was already lost. Armies stood down. Citizens demanded surrender. Leaders argued in fear behind closed doors. But none of it mattered. The flagship continued its silent show. For a brief moment, lights flashed across the ship's hull, thousands of drones deployed, each one glimmering with cold steel and energy cores. They swarmed around the flagship like a school of predators, moving in perfect formation. They did not fire. They did not even target the fleets nearby. They simply circled, like wolves, surrounding prey. The galaxy understood. This was not an attack. This was a demonstration. The humans were telling them. If war came, no one would survive. In the chamber, a delegate finally collapsed, trembling too much to stand. His voice cracked. "We are already defeated. They have not fired, but they have already won." Others looked at him with horror, but in their hearts, they knew he spoke the truth. The silence was the weapon. The silence was the victory. As the flagship drifted, as the drones circled, as the galaxy held its breath, one thing became certain. Humanity had no need for words, no need for battles. Their very presence was enough to remind the stars who held power. And still, no voice came from the flagship. No envoy stepped forward. No demand was made. Only silence, only power, only fear, and the galaxy understood. The humans had not come for talks. They had come to remind the universe that they were always watching, always waiting, and always stronger. Messages ignored. The council could no longer sit in silence. The weight of fear was crushing them. Something had to be done, and so they turned to the only action left. They tried to reach out. Dozens of messages were sent toward the human flagship. Some were calls for peace, spoken in trembling voices. Others were formal greetings, filled with careful words of diplomacy. A few were desperate pleas, promising tribute, promising loyalty, promising anything, just to make the humans answer. But the flagship gave no reply. The great ship hovered above the planet like a shadow carved into the stars. Its weapons remained silent. Its drones moved in perfect patterns. Its engines glowed with quiet menace. But no message came. Inside the chamber, delegates grew more frantic. "They ignore us!" one cried. "They do not even hear us!" another shouted. The noise rose like a storm. Fear mixed with anger, and despair grew heavier. Admiral Kazara sent a direct transmission, her voice sharp, her words chosen with care. "This is Admiral Kazara of the Unified Defense Fleet. We welcome your envoy. We request confirmation of your purpose here." Her voice echoed across space, but the silence of the human ship swallowed it whole. No answer. Hours passed. The council tried again. They sent translations in 100 tongues. They used ancient codes. They even sent symbols of peace, glowing lights across the void. Still the humans ignored them. It was as if the galaxy itself no longer mattered, as if the humans no longer considered the council worth answering. Fear turned to anger. Some delegates pounded their tables, their voices shaking but filled with pride. "They insult us," one declared. "They believe we are beneath them." Another shouted, "If they do not answer, then we must show we are not afraid." But no one truly believed those words. They were spoken to hide fear, not courage. Across the fleets, messages spread quickly. Captains asked for orders. Soldiers whispered about what it meant. Civilians in the cities below fell deeper into panic. Some begged their leaders to surrender at once. Others demanded ships fire upon the flagship. But no command came. Only silence on distant worlds. Riots began. Citizens feared the humans would destroy everything. Shops closed, temples filled with prayers. Kings and emperors locked themselves in their palaces, hoping the flagship would pass them by. And still, the humans ignored every message. Inside the chamber, a young delegate stood and raised his voice above the chaos. "Don't you see? This is their answer. Their silence is the answer. They do not need to speak to us. They do not see us as equals. They see us as subjects, or worse, as prey." The words chilled the chamber, because deep inside, every delegate already knew it was true. Admiral Kazara clenched her fists, Her voice cracked when she spoke to her officers. They are telling us everything without saying a word. They are telling us we cannot force them, we cannot reach them, we cannot even make them answer. One of her officers whispered, "Then what do we do, Admiral?" Kazara looked back at the massive black shape hanging in the void. "We wait," she said, though her heart screamed another truth. Waiting was surrender. Waiting was submission, the yo. Flagship drifted closer. Its shadow now covered the entire orbital ring. Cities below dimmed as daylight vanished under its presence. To the people on the surface, it was as if night had fallen early, a night filled not with stars but with one single dark shape that blotted out the heavens. Messages continued to pour out from the planet, desperate signals begging for response. But the flagship's silence grew heavier with every passing hour. It was not absence, it was not ignorance, it was deliberate, calculated silence. A silence that screamed louder than words. In taverns and markets across the galaxy, citizens spoke. In whispers, "The humans have returned. They do not need peace. They do not need war. They need only to remind us." And so the galaxy trembled, waiting for words that would never come. The Council, once proud and united, now sat broken. Some curled in silence, others wept openly. A few still shouted, but their voices were hollow. Their messages had been ignored. Their pleas had been cast into the void, and all that remained was fear. As Admiral Kazara stared at the flagship, she realized the most terrifying truth of all. The humans had already spoken. They had spoken through silence, through presence, through the shadow that covered an entire world, and their message was simple. The galaxy was not worth their words. A test of resolve. The silence of the human flagship had lasted too long. The galaxy could no longer bear it. Fear had spread like fire, and anger had begun to replace it. Some leaders whispered of surrender, but others spoke of pride. They said they could not allow humanity to humiliate them without a single shot being fired. And so, one commander stepped forward. His name was Admiral Varric of the Creel Dominion. His fleet was vast. His ships armed with plasma cannons and ion torpedoes. For years he had fought wars against rival empires, and he was known for his iron will. He would not sit trembling before a silent ship. Varric sent a message across the council chamber. His voice thundered. "If humanity thinks they can frighten us with shadows and silence, then let us show them our strength. Let us confront them. If we bow here, then we bow forever." Some delegates cheered. Desperate for any sign of defiance, others shook their heads in terror. But Varric did not wait for votes. He ordered his fleet forward. Hundreds of Creel warships moved into formation. Their engines roared, their cannons powered up. Energy crackled. Across the void, the sight alone gave courage to some who watched from afar. Finally, someone dared to resist. Finally, someone showed resolve. The human flagship remained still. Varric's ships approached slowly, surrounding the massive vessel, weapons locked, shields raised. The Creel fleet shouted its defiance through action. It was a clear message to the galaxy. Someone still had courage. Inside the council chamber, delegates leaned forward. Some whispered prayers, some whispered curses. Admiral Kazara stood stiff, her eyes fixed on the screens. She whispered to herself, "Do not provoke them, fool." The Creel warships fired a warning volley. Bright plasma blasts streaked across space. They exploded harmlessly against the shimmering shields of the flagship. The human ship did not return fire. For a moment, the Creel cheered. Their weapons had struck. Their courage had been shown, but their joy faded when the flagship finally moved. The black hull shimmered with light. Thousands of points across its surface came alive. Panels opened, vast bays unlocked. From within, a swarm of machines poured out. Drones, sleek, silver, armed with weapons the Creel had never seen. They moved like predators, silent, controlled. Surrounding the Creel fleet in perfect formation, the Creel fired again. Plasma and torpedoes burst against the drones, but the weapons passed through energy barriers that bent reality itself. Not a single drone fell, Admiral Varric shouted orders. His fleet launched everything they had, but the human drones did not fire back. They only hovered closer, weaving between Creel ships like shadows of death. Their silence was worse than battle on the council floor. Fear returned stronger than before. Delegates screamed, some shouted to order Varric back, others demanded immediate surrender to the humans. The chamber shook with panic, and then the human flagship revealed its true power without firing a single weapon. It activated its shield grid. A wall of light spread out from its hull, wrapping around the Creel fleet. Every Creel ship found its systems dead. Engines powered down, weapons froze, lights went black. The entire fleet was trapped, drifting. Helplessly, Admiral Varric pounded his console, his voice desperate. Reactivate! Fight! Do not give in! But his crew sat in silence. Their screens showed nothing but static. Their weapons were ghosts. Their power was gone. The human drones circled the disabled fleet like vultures. Their weapons glowed faintly, but they did not fire. They did not need to. The Creel were already defeated. In the chamber, a delegate whispered, "They have crushed an entire fleet without firing once," another muttered. "This is not war, this is domination." Admiral Kazara's face was pale, her voice heavy. "They are showing us, showing the entire galaxy, that resistance is useless. No matter how many ships we bring, no matter what weapons we use, the outcome is the same." The Creel fleet drifted powerless, and then, as if to make the message clearer, the flagship released them. Power returned to their systems. Engines roared back to life. Weapons lit again. The humans could have destroyed them, but instead they had given them back their ships. It was not mercy, it was humiliation. Admiral Varric sat frozen on his bridge, his pride shattered. His fleet had been defeated without a battle, and his name would forever be remembered as the fool who challenged the humans. The chamber was silent once again, but this silence was heavier than before. Every delegate now understood. The humans did not just have strength, they had control. They could end wars without battles. They could destroy fleets without firing. They could terrify empires without speaking, and the galaxy trembled. The breaking point. The galaxy had watched Admiral Varric's proud fleet fall without a fight. They had seen the human flagship disable hundreds of ships with a single motion. They had seen the drones move like wolves among helpless prey. And they had seen the humans give back what they had taken, not as kindness, but as a reminder. The message was clear. Humanity did not need to destroy. They only needed to show what they could do. And that was enough to break the courage of empires. Across the stars, fear spread faster than light. In border colonies, citizens demanded their leaders surrender before the humans arrived. In rich capitals, nobles wept and begged their rulers to keep the peace. Whole armies refused to fight, knowing their weapons were useless. In the council chamber, the atmosphere was heavier than ever. The delegates sat pale and trembling. The proud voices of earlier sessions were gone, replaced by whispers. Some leaders no longer even raised their heads. They could not look at the screens showing the black flagship. One delegate, her wings folded tight, muttered, "This is the end. The galaxy will bend before them, piece by piece." Another whispered, "Perhaps it is better this way. Perhaps it is better to live in fear than to die in war." But not all. Agreed, a small group still clung to pride. They whispered to one another, planning rebellion, planning resistance. Their voices were weak, but their anger was real. They could not accept a galaxy ruled by silence and shadows. Admiral Kazara stood again before the council, her voice cold and sharp. "You saw what they did. You saw how they broke Varric without a shot. You saw how they left him alive only. To humiliate him. This is not mercy. This is power. And if you think you can resist it, then you are blind." Her words were like knives, cutting through the chamber. Some delegates nodded. Others turned away in shame, but all knew she was right. Outside, the human flagship moved once more. Slowly, deliberately, it drifted across the fleets. Every ship it passed shook with fear. Crews saluted out of instinct. Not loyalty. Soldiers bowed their heads. Civilians fell to their knees. The ship did not speak, but its silence bent wills. In far-off worlds, riots broke out. Entire governments collapsed. Citizens no longer trusted their rulers. Some planets declared independence, choosing to submit to humanity before their leaders. Could act, others revolted, shouting that their rulers were cowards for failing to resist. The galaxy was fracturing, not from human weapons, but from human presence. In the chamber, the Supreme Speaker tried to hold the last threads of unity, his voice weak but desperate. We must remain together. We must not give in to fear. Humanity cannot rule us if we stand as one. But his words were too late. Already, messages came. From across the galaxy, one empire after another declaring surrender. Some pledging loyalty to humanity, others simply begging to be spared. Whole sectors gave up without a single battle. A delegate slammed his fist on the table. His voice bitter. Do you not see? They have broken us without firing. They did not need war. We destroyed ourselves. The chamber fell silent again. No one argued because every word was true. On the bridge of her ship, Admiral Kazara looked out at the void. She whispered softly, "This is the breaking point. The galaxy has already fallen. They just don't realize it yet." The Human Flagship turned slowly, positioning itself so that its shadow stretched across the planet and fleets like a black horizon. Its drones hovered close, their lights pulsing, like silent warnings, and still no words came. The silence pressed harder than ever. It was no longer just fear. It was surrender. It was obedience. Entire civilizations bent beneath a weight that was invisible, yet stronger than any weapon. Across the galaxy, people spoke only in whispers now. They did not ask when the humans would speak. They asked what would happen when they did. And in that question lay the truth. Humanity had already conquered. The galaxy had reached its breaking point. The terrifying truth. The council chamber was silent. The delegates sat broken, their heads bowed, their voices gone. The arguments, the shouts, the anger, all of it had been crushed by the weight of fear. No one asked for talks anymore. No one asked for peace. They only waited. The Human Flagship hovered above the planet. Its shadow stretched across oceans and continents. Its black hull shone with the scars of countless battles. Its engines pulsed like the heartbeat of some great beast, and yet it still had not fired a single weapon. It still had not spoken a single word, but the silence was worse than fire, worse than war, worse than death. Admiral Kazara stood at her post, her eyes fixed on the colossal ship. She whispered to herself, "They are watching. They are judging." Her officers looked at her with fear, for they felt the same. It was as though every alien heart in the galaxy had been placed under the gaze of something far greater, and then it happened. For the first time since its arrival, the flagship sent a signal, a single broadcast, one message that reached every ship, every station, every city across the stars. It was not long, it was not complex. It was a voice, calm, cold, unmistakably human. "We came not to talk," the voice said. "We came to remind you. We are watching." The words echoed like thunder across the galaxy. They were simple, but their weight was unbearable. It was not a declaration of war. It was not a promise of peace. It was something worse. It was a warning. In the chamber, many delegates collapsed to their knees. Some wept openly. Others clutched their robes in despair. A few screamed, covering their ears as if the words themselves were poison. But the message was already inside them. It would never leave. On distant worlds, citizens froze as the voice reached them. In mining colonies, workers dropped their tools. In great capitals, rulers trembled on their thrones. On warships, soldiers lowered their weapons in silence. Everywhere, across every system, the same truth took root. Humanity did not need to rule with armies. They ruled with fear, Admiral Varric, the one who had tried to defy them, sat broken on his bridge, his voice hoarse as he whispered, "We are nothing to them, nothing but shadows before their fire." His officers dared not respond. They only stared at the black colossus outside. Admiral Kazara clenched her fists, her voice heavy with respect and terror. This is the terrifying truth. They did not come to negotiate. They did not come to destroy. They came to show us that they could do either whenever they wished, and none of us could stop them. Her words spread among the council, and though no one wished to admit it, they all agreed humanity had proven itself the master of the stars, not through conquest, but through presence. The flagship did not stay. Slowly it turned, its engines flared, and the black beast of steel began to drift away. The drones returned to their bays, the lights along its hull dimmed, and then, without another word, it vanished into the void, but its shadow remained, even after it was gone. The fear of it lingered in every heart. The galaxy was no longer the same. Every empire knew the truth now. They could build fleets, they could forge alliances, they could shout about strength, but none of it mattered, because the humans were always watching. In marketplaces, people whispered the words, "We are watched." In temples, priests declared humanity to be divine messengers of judgment. In barracks, soldiers swore oaths never to provoke them. The galaxy reshaped itself overnight, not by choice, but by terror. The supreme speaker of the council looked around the broken chamber, his voice barely a whisper. "It is finished. The humans rule us without lifting a weapon. They rule us with silence, with fear, with truth." And so it was. The terrifying truth was clear to all. Humanity did not need battles. Humanity did not need to conquer. Humanity only needed to arrive, to stand, to watch, and the galaxy would bow. The humans had not spoken of peace. They had not spoken of war. They had spoken only of power, and the stars themselves had listened,